In York County, Pennsylvania, there's a rumor that Helen was once actually called Hell back in the 18th century when the township was formed due to a large sulfur pit on the outskirts of town, the boiling brimstone inspiring visions of hell. And off of Helen's Trout Run Road, which runs out of town and into the surrounding countryside, a road supposedly originally named Toad Road is Long Trail, formerly an old road leading deep into a huge piece of private property barred by an iron gate. No trespassing signs are posted near the gate. If you were allowed in and able to continue down the trail, you would, according to this legend, come to another gate, and then another, and then another, and so on until you had passed a total of 7 gates called the 7 Gates of Hell. How did this piece of property get such a peculiar and devilish name? The story goes that in the early 1800s, a physician's house was located near the first gate. Further down the trail was a remote compound used for a brief time as an asylum for the insane criminal, and otherwise, and also the simply unwanted. The remote location of the asylum was intended to help locals feel safe, far removed from the oftentimes dangerous insanity within. However, this desired effect was never achieved due to rumors of frequent escapes, some of which led to rapes, assaults, even murders. Most of these supposed escapes and violent crimes were probably just baseless rumors, but the accumulation of these stories, true or not, led the residents of Helen to feel frightened of the asylum and his residents. Then one night, the last night of the asylum's existence, a fire broke out in the facility. The fire department was called, but they couldn't get there fast enough. The local volunteers struggled up the rural road that felt more like a trail back then, with their heavy equipment. The fire quickly turned into a horrific tragedy. There wasn't enough staff to both get all the patients out and supervise the dangerous ones who were getting out. An untold number of patients ended up roaming the woods unsupervised, while over 100 burned to death. The stench of death reportedly blanketed the township for days after the fire was finally put out by the fire department. Many of the local residents went about trying to round up the remaining wandering patients, and someone found had no interest in being apprehended. They resisted. Fights broke out, fights that led in some cases to more deaths. Some of the escaped patients were killed by locals who had no interest in capturing them alive. They wanted them gone. They didn't want to worry about some violent, criminally insane person escaping again, and they dished out what they felt was vigilante justice, murdering whomever they found. According to legend, after all this fire and violence in a futile attempt to assure the locals a new asylum would be much safer for everyone, the doctor, who went a little mad over all this, decided to build a series of gates along the road in order to keep any future patients in and any curious visitors out. But due to so much opposition, the new asylum would not be built. Only the ruins of the first one, and the gates now remain. And now an urban legend states that due to all the death and destruction in the air, all the grief and fear and evil acts that had raised through the woods, the road of gates became an actual pathway to hell. Supposedly, some who have trespassed claim to have found the gates, and they've reported that as you pass through each gate, an ominous feeling of dread intensifies. According to the legend, once you pass through the 7th gate, you arrive in hell itself. Obviously, this can come across as pretty far-fetched, which is partially what led 2 local teams named online as Jay and Monica to do some trespassing and exploring several years ago. They weren't really worried until, of course, they were. Jay and Monica both took great care to quietly sneak out of their houses and meet up that night. They knew that if their parents caught them, it might be the end of a lot of their hanging out alone together. Both their families were pretty conservative, and as they were both 14, neither were allowed to date yet. Jay heard about the 7 gates of hell, less than 10 miles from York, where he and Monica lived, right next to Helen, not far at all when you're fast on a bike. How cool to explore the remnants of the old burned-down asylum that supposedly lied just past the 6th gate. They were both pumped to check it out. The two met up at a park in between their houses at 11:30 p.m. on a Friday night. Both sets of their parents were always sound asleep by no later than 11. This gave them plenty of time to make it to the 6th gate by the witching hour of 3 a.m. If something was going to happen, they figured that would be the best time for it, so they pedaled away in the dark until they made it to the 1st gate. On the way there, they talked about what they might encounter. A ghost, a demon, what they'd do if they saw it. Ride away as fast as they could? Try and take a video with their phones first? Tell it to go back to hell? Yeah, right, they laughed. They'd be way too freaked out for that. They debated the possibility of hell existing or not, and if it did, how some random place in Pennsylvania could supposedly transport you there. They wondered if the asylum was even a real place, or if the whole story was nonsense. They both decided that, best case, they'd see a ghost, maybe the ghost of one of the old patients. They'd see it. It would do something scary like scream at them. They'd get that on video then. Maybe when they were a little older, not so worried about getting in trouble, they'd show the video to some ghost hunter show's TV producer, get interviewed, get on the show, and be way more famous than anyone else in their class. They joked about all sorts of stuff. Half joked. Now that they were at the gate, they hid their bikes and decided to walk down the trail that was once a road a long time ago. They wouldn't even need to use the lights on their phones. It was almost a full moon one. It was a really clear night, and after climbing up and over the 1st gate, it took so long to get to the 2nd gate that they started to think that there were no 7 gates, and began to consider calling the whole thing off and heading back to their houses. But then, there it was, the 2nd gate. At least part of the legend was true. Once they climbed over the 2nd gate, they expected to hear something as they walked to the 3rd. Strange, night noises, whispers, a child's creepy laugh, something. But they didn't hear anything. Now they worried that there would be 7 gates, but there would be nothing supernatural about any of them. Then between the 2nd and the 3rd gate, they started to feel something. Jay spoke about it first. Do you feel that? Yes. Monica's eyes lit up. Like something watching us, right? Totally, that's exactly it. They weren't scared yet, not much anyway. Mostly excited. They'd risked getting a lot of trouble with their parents to see something paranormal, and now it felt a whole lot more possible than it had a few minutes before. The feeling of something watching them continued as they proceeded to approach the 3rd gate. They talked about how, according to legend, things were supposed to escalate from gate to gate. They wondered what might happen between gates 3 and 4, or if they were just imagining that feeling of being watched and getting themselves all worked up over nothing. After climbing over the 3rd gate, Monica was now the first to speak. Do you see that? Watching us from over there on the left? She pointed. They both were looking at what seemed to be a set of glowing eyes watching them from the brush off to the left. Way off in the distance, the eyes looked a lot like how deer's eyes look when someone's headlights hit them, but not nearly as harmless. Somehow, it's kind of freaking me out, said Monica. Yeah, me too, said Jay, as he kept his eyes on whatever was watching them. Without even really realizing it, they both moved towards each other, walking as close as a couple would if they were holding hands. The 4th gate. Neither were all that happy to see it. Both had started to hope that there were no 7 gates, that it was all just urban legend. They both began to worry about how much worse things could get after climbing over the 4th gate. Monica spoke first again. It's too quiet. I know, whispered Jay, and look, he pointed. Monica didn't need to remind him the eyes were still there, still following them. And it was way too quiet. The noises they themselves made were the only noises they heard. The sound of their footfalls, their own increasingly anxious breathing. They talked about and couldn't remember what noises they'd heard earlier that they weren't hearing now. Bugs, the wind, the the distant droning of the occasional truck. Maybe whatever they'd been hearing, it was gone now, too quiet. And there were those eyes, whatever was out there that was still following them. Were they a bit closer now? And the feeling of being watched wasn't going away. It was coming from those eyes. The fifth gate. When they got to the fifth gate, Jay said what they were both thinking. Should we just go back? Monica looked at her phone. It was just past 1 a.m. They hadn't been out that long, but she was getting pretty scared. What if those things look like eyes with eyes of a bear or something? I mean, who knows what could be out there tracking them? But then she surprised Jay, and herself actually, with her answer. No, let's just go at least to the sixth gate. We made it this far. I want to see if we can see the ruins from there. Okay, said Jay. Yeah, okay, cool. Sorry, just got a little freaked out, but yeah, that would be cool. All right, said Monica, let's go. She put her hand on his and was surprised by a tingling in the pit of his stomach that wasn't from fear. They climbed over the fifth gate, and not more than a minute after walking past it, Jay hit the ground. Oh, what the hell? He yelled. Are you okay? Yelled Monica back. What happened to you? Did you? She flew to the ground as well, and since he was watching her, when she was pushed, Jay saw the shadow whiz past it. Oh, did you see that? Let's hurry. Let's just get to the sixth gate as fast as we can, and let's get the hell out of here. There, Monica yelled, pointing. There's that thing. She pointed to some kind of shadow man with another set of those glowing eyes. Off to the right, now there were two sets of eyes. The hell with this. Let's go back. When they saw the sixth gate, they both wanted to leave fast to run back to their bikes, pedal like they'd never pedaled before, back to the safety of their rooms. Jay climbed over first, quickly turned back around facing the gate to help Monica down. When he began to turn around, facing away from the gate, made him just about jump out of his skin. There must have been 100 sets of glowing eyes in front of them. Some of their figures only shadows, but some of the closest ones, the ones moving towards them, now they can see their faces. Their bodies most look burnt, melted flesh, oozing wounds, torn and charred clothes. Others were unburned but mangled with bent and broken necks like they've been violently hanged. All of them look malevolent. All of them seem to be coming directly for them. Both knew if these things made it to them, they wouldn't just let loose with a scary scream. They'd grab them. They'd hurt them. If that shadow thing could push them before this gate, these things would probably do a whole hell of a lot more. Neither wanted to find out exactly how much more. Go, go, go! Yelled Jay. Monica was already halfway back over the gate when he started yelling. Come on! She screamed. It's going to grab you! As Monica made it over, Jay did scream, No! One of the things grabbed his calf as he tried to swing his leg over the top of the gate. He looked back and was face to face with this pulsating, bleeding, mangled mask of gore. It was grinning. In his eyes, those glowing eyes, they were rotten, full of insanity and hate. And then Jay felt Monica pulling him backwards. He tumbled, landed flat on his back, the wind rushing out of his lungs as he hit the ground. He wasn't breathing for the moment, but he made it to the other side of the sixth gate. Get up, Jay! Monica screamed. We have to run now. Jay got up as best he could and stumbled along as Monica led him by the hand. Soon, full of so much adrenaline, he was running as well, and then Monica went airborne ahead of him and fell face down on the ground. That shadow. It was back. They kept running. They climbed over the gates until there were no more eyes. They ran all the way back to the first gate and climbed over it as well as holding hands the whole way. And then, when they made it over the first gate, Monica burst into tears with relief and fear. What the hell were those things? She screamed. I don't know. Ghosts? Demons? He said as he held Monica. He was shaking too. So much for that video, he said. I forgot we even talked about that before the last game, Monica said. I'm so glad we're alive. I literally thought we were going to die." "Me too," said Jay, still holding her. He hated what it took to get to this moment, but this moment was pretty amazing. Before they got back on their bikes and pedaled to their houses, Jay knew one thing. For certain, he knew he would never go back to the 7 gates of hell ever again.